What's going on, everyone? Welcome to the Pride Detroit YouTube channel. I'm Meko, once again joined by my guy Morgan here. Morgan, we got the Minnesota Vikings and the Detroit Lions squaring off for another NFC North matchup. Uh, there's a lot to first of all, there's a lot at stake, right? NFC North division could get locked up this weekend with the Lions getting a win. And at the same time, the Vikings are coming off of another loss this past season or this past week against the Cincinnati Bengals, and a game where honestly, like they were in control of that game for a good portion of it, but really kind of saw that kind of slip away from them late in the fourth quarter.
Yeah, I actually watched most of that game, and I actually thoroughly enjoyed it, particularly the end. Sorry, Vikings fans, but that was very sweet to me. Um, I don't know
Yeah, I
about you,
mean,
but
no, I was gonna say like same here. Like going through the film today to get some of the clips that we're gonna talk about today, specifically focusing in on the Vikings defense. It was really hard to understand how they lost this game because for a good chunk of it, they were in command. They were making life very difficult on Cincinnati in terms of their offense being able to find any kind of rhythm. The Bengals lost Jamar Chase, and yet they still find a way of getting a win, and again making it that much easier for the Lions to be able to lock up this division come Sunday.
yeah, I mean, it puts a lot on the line for the Lions. I mean, same thing for the Vikings, though. They're playing for their playoff lives. Obviously they lost their starting quarterback, Kirk Cousins, several weeks ago now, and they had the little run with Dobbs, and now they've turned to Mullins. So, but the thing that's been making this team tick still is the defense. They're still playing at a really, really high level. They're actually fifth overall in terms of DVOA, seventh against the pass, ninth against the run. So they can do it all. It's going to be a good challenge, and that atmosphere. I've never been to that stadium, but everyone tells me it's such a beautiful stadium, and we know it gets loud in there. So yeah,
Yeah,
it's gonna be a challenge.
Yeah, absolutely. And so that's why in today's video we're going to spend most of our time talking about the defense in this video, because not because the offense isn't an issue, right? They did get Justin Jefferson back. They do have Jordan Addison over there. TJ Hawkinson is someone that most Lions fans are very, very familiar with. So it's not like the offense is not a threat. But Morgan, I think you and I would both agree when it comes down to the Lions being able to come out on top, it's really going to be put onto the offensive side of their shoulders as far as being able to counteract this aggressive Vikings defense that's over there.
Yeah, and Brian Flores is their defensive coordinator, and he's really good at what he does. I hope he gets another head coaching job in the near future because he definitely deserves it after the shake he got in Miami. I don't think that's a whole nother video. But yeah, I
Yeah,
really like I like Brian Flores. The Vikings blitz a lot, but then at in the same token, they'll drop eight a lot and only rush three. So it's
yeah,
really like almost like a two-face defense. They can do a bit of both, and they mug the line of scrimmage. They disguise what they're doing pre-snap really well, just so it's just that much more difficult on the other team's quarterback and the center trying to get the protections right and get all their checks in place. So yeah, it's a thing. It's something you have to deal with, and it's unique to Brian Flores because he does it at just a higher clip than just about everybody else.
yeah. I think the last time I checked, like the Vikings are up there again near the top of the league, or if not the top of the league, when it comes down to blitzing. And that's going to be the first thing we're going to look at in the first play that we got here uh, from the Vikings game against the Bengals. They lined up two linebackers here, Morgan, in basically the middle of this defensive line, and they're going to kind of basically twist them and try to get to the quarterback. And this does turn out to be a completion, but it's not an easy one. I guess I can say it that way.
Yeah, and they do a lot of this. They move around pre-snap too, so you'll have linebackers jumping in and out of the A gaps, just giving quarterbacks a look. And this is tattooing, man. This looks like a hard hit live. But you'll see 45, I believe, loops around. Pace goes first, and 45 is like a slightly delayed blitz, and Die is his name, and he just tattoos. Good legal hit because he had a full head of steam, right? That looked like it hurt.
Yeah, man. I mean, again, being able to again line up the strike zone, being able to hit him just right, not too high, not too low. And again, Browning does a good job of completing this pass, but these are the types of things that Jared Goff is going to have to deal with in terms of A, being able to get the ball out quickly because of how complex some of these blitz packages can get, but at the same time being willing to take a hit and not get jumpy the minute he sees somebody possibly coming free.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's going to be, he did a better job last week after that initial little fuzzy spot in the first quarter of standing tall in the pocket and delivering strikes because Denver did blitz, but the Lions' offensive line, the starters were in there and they did a really good job of just picking just about everything up. They kept Goff pretty clean. And that's going to come down to Goff getting it out quick, knowing who's hot, who he needs to look at, where the blitz is coming from. But it's also going to be on the line, right? So some of these
Yeah.
delayed blitzes, they're going to have to pick up. Like 64 here, does a good job of blocking his assignment, but he doesn't really keep his head on a swivel, and it ends up getting his quarterback tattooed.
Yeah. And I mean, I think, again, it's also going to be important on the running backs, right? Because as we see here, Joe Mixon takes the outside block there. And so, again, should he maybe have stayed in a little bit to pick up 45, who's coming in hot? Who knows? But I think that's kind of what you're saying, right? This entire offense, offensive line, quarterback, running back, all have to be on the same page in terms of being able to identify these types of blitz packages so that, again, even if Jared Goff is going to take a hit, he at least gets a little bit of time to go through his progressions and figure out who he wants to get the ball to before, forcing an errant pass anywhere.
Yep. And I think a lot of it's going to be built in. There's going to be chips and releases. There's going to be stuff in the flat. This might be a little bit of a dink and dunk game at first, just because you're going to need to slow down this blitz. Like when Flores does dial up some of these elaborate blitzes we're going to look at here. There's going to be countermeasures. I could see this being a nice draw game. Where you
Yeah.
hit them on a delayed handoff. That would be really nice to slow them down, and then also the screen game. I don't want them to abuse it like they did in the loss against Chicago, because then you don't want to spam that too much.
Yeah.
But yeah, couple little this, little that, it'll slow it down and make them think twice. Just before, running with their hair on fire, because that's what we don't want on obvious passing downs, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think to your point, I think also still just trying to keep in those deep shots when you can, right? As we saw with, the Bengals making that pass to Jamar Chase. The scouting report is going to be that, like, hey, Minnesota wants to blitz you. But that also means that they know that you're probably going to try to go to those screens and to those draw plays, which they're really good at defending as well. They're athletic on the defensive side. They have guys that are really good at flowing to the ball. So again, for Ben Johnson, for Jared Goff, absolutely take what the defense is giving you. Try to exploit those blitzes when they come, but at the same time, don't feel like you have to be super conservative and still feel like you can take a shot here and there. It just may have to be, a bit of a quicker process than what they're normally used to doing.
Yeah, and this is it's going to be paramount for them to stretch the field vertically and horizontally, right? You want to
Yeah.
spread them out a little bit, just so it's not so easy for them to mug the line of scrimmage with 7 or 8 guys. So if you spread them out, that can help. And then taking some deep shots, like let JMO get a clean release and maybe just flick it up there and see if he can't run under it. But yeah, this next play is a good example of another example of Minnesota giving an offense hell. Pace, I really do like Pace, Meko. He can fly around.
Yeah.
Um, Probably one of my favorite young linebackers in football right now that's not wearing Honolulu blue. And yeah, this is just another clever design from Flores. You'll watch Pace loop around, and then Murphy actually is the one who gets the good pressure because he's unblocked, unfortunately for Cincinnati.
Yeah, and honestly, like to your point about Pace, Pace has a really good opportunity to possibly get a sack here, if not for the fact that the running back has to hold him to basically keep him away from his quarterback. But I'm
Mhm.
right there with you about Ivan Pace. He was one of those guys that I kind of found out about late in the draft process last year, uh, and really liked him. The only downside that I had about him was like he was basically like Malcolm Rodriguez 2.0,
Mhm.
smaller linebacker, really athletic. But the thing that Ivan Pace does really well for this defense is blitz. Like, if you're looking for a guy that you want to get after the quarterback quickly and efficiently, Ivan Pace Jr. is the guy to kind of keep an eye on.
Yeah, and he does a good job of hitting whatever gap he's attacking at 100 miles an hour. He's 5'10", 230, not an overly big or physical presence at linebacker, but when you play fast and the way he does, like with his hair on fire, if you will, yeah, you can make plays, and they use him. Flores, I'm sure, saw him, and he's like, "Oh yeah, I can make I can make something happen with this guy." So, yeah, it's another. This is going to be again on the offensive line. You know, both pre-snap and post-snap, communicating and trying their best to pick up some of these looping blitzes, some of these delayed blitzes, because it gets tricky. I know it sounds simple with us talking about it, but it's definitely tricky.
Yeah, and again, with the Bengals again picking up a holding here, this is still a win for the defense. Yes, they don't get a sack. No, they don't necessarily get an incompletion or anything there, but you are able to draw a penalty. Now they have to go back 10 yards, and now their offense is off schedule. Again, we know with the Lions that is something that they can't afford to happen. Jared Goff and Ben Johnson really like to be on schedule, like to be able to get to those, second and manageables, those third and shorts and things of that nature. If you start getting holding penalties because guys are late to react to blitzes, this could really be a problem for the Lions going forward.
Yeah, and you don't want to. Yeah, for sure, I'm with you there. You don't want to get behind the sticks because you get into your third and longs. That's when Flores is going to go to his little magic bag of horrors for offenses, and he's going to pull something out of there that you're not going to like because we're going to look at it this next one here because this is
Yeah.
tough to decipher. Like, this is a young quarterback they're playing in this situation, if I'm not mistaken. In this next
And
clip,
Justin
Miko.
Fields. Yeah, and
Yeah.
Justin Fields in
So
this one, yeah, where they basically, like you're saying, they make this really difficult on him, basically mugging the entire, offensive line by putting so many guys at the line of scrimmage and sending everybody.
yeah, and it's just straight up cover zero. They're playing soft coverage on the outside, but they're banking on Fields not being quick enough to get this ball out, and they don't do a terrible job of picking it up. Chicago doesn't,
Yeah.
but when you bring they rushed eight. Um, so yeah, you got to have someone hot. This isn't the best play to beat this. Oh, they rushed seven, excuse me, because they had four receivers out there. And yeah, just not the best offensive play to beat cover zero. Just a cover zero blitz like this. You need something that's going to get it out hot quickly. But
Mm-hmm.
yeah, this is something that can happen if they get you into a third and obvious passing down because they can dial something up like this, and it's no bueno.
Yeah, and this is something again, Jared Goff is going to have to be able to show that level of discernment to be able to understand, okay, this is like whether this is a real blitz, whether they're just faking this, because Chicago will still do stuff like this, right? Mug up the line of scrimmage and then just drop everybody. So it's going to be really imperative for him and Frank Ragnow to be on the same page of like, okay, either we're gonna kill the play that we have and go to something that's more advantageous to us as an offense, or we're going to try to still run this play, but this is going to be like you're saying, like I got to know where my hot route is and I got to be able to get this out quickly.
Yep. Yeah, you got to have a plan. I think that's the big thing. And then if they do all drop, then shoot, then you might have a little bit of time to sit back there and go through your progressions, right? The way he likes to. So yeah, it's something you're gonna have to be prepared for. Prepared for, excuse me. And the tricky thing is Minnesota's pretty damn good against the run too. So it's not on paper at least it's not something the Lions can just bludgeon them with.
No,
Hopefully,
I mean, I think this past week against the Bengals, I think the Bengals did start to find some success, in their run game with against the Vikings, just because again, like this, there's a pro and a con to blitzing, right, Morgan? Like it's not all just like, oh, this is just a problem for the offense and they have no answer to it. There are answers to this. It is running the ball. It is doing like what you were saying earlier, running screens and running draws. Anything that can kind of mislead the defense and get them to just pause for a half second, or again with an offensive line like the Lions have that's very aggressive in the run game, there is a possibility that you can just catch them in some of these blitzes and just constantly move people out the way, because of where they're trying to blitz from, and then basically running to those open lanes on the field.
yeah, you can definitely get caught on a run blitz. Like you can get gashed, and then to your point, Miko, that's a great great segue. Is that's how the Lions made a lot of hay last week. Was just making big play after big play because the Broncos were dialing up blitzes.
Mm-hmm.
The Lions were picking it up, and then you had Amon Ra wide open in the middle, or you had Laporta by himself streaking up the sideline. So you
Yeah.
just there was, if to your point, that's an excellent segue. Is if you do pick up those blitzes, like say Minnesota doesn't get home on a few of those are the plays that Goff's looking for to take his shots because then you have numbers.
Yeah, because again, as much as we're going to highlight these blitzes, I mean, Morgan, I'm pretty sure you can attest to this. Going through the film, as frequently as Minnesota blitzes, they don't all get home. And not that they're designed to necessarily. Again, sometimes you blitz just to kind of get that in the back of the quarterback's mind, and now he has to think about one additional thing. But they do give up completions. Cincinnati was able to move the ball against them. We just looked at the Bears. As much as the Vikings blitzed in that game, the Bears still won that game. The play that we're about to look at here, they blitzed San Francisco quite a bit. They ended up winning, but again, San Francisco moved the ball quite a bit up and down the field on Minnesota, despite them being very aggressive in their blitzing. And again, coming up with unique ways of blitzing the quarterback, like packages like this one.
Yeah, and like look at this. Here again, the Niners. This is a Shanahan staple. It's a very condensed offensive formation. That they like to start out tight. They'll mix in some wide stuff there, but San Francisco's tight. So then it allows Flores to do things like this. So he's got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 bodies to the right of the football, right? So your the offensive line's starting to have an account, and then you have one extra edge rusher on the top there. And yeah, it's just a lot to deal with. They're mugging the line of scrimmage, and then they're flipping around pre-snap. Someone walks up into the A gap, and then the defensive lineman there ends up dropping, and 25 ends up blitzing. So, right, 25, Meko?
Yeah, yeah. And so that's another thing that, as again, being able to recognize, being able to communicate and understand, okay, who's blitzing, who's not. I like how you said, someone kind of just walked up, number 44, which I believe is Metellus, just casually walks up to the line where it's, again, you have to now determine, like, is he actually blitzing or is he going to drop? Because he's not, moving with any amount of urgency.
No, and just a good way of just making the quarterback think about one more thing as the ball's about to be snapped. And honestly, Purdy does a hell of a job of escaping and then tries throwing like a circus throw across his body across the field, which is typically a no-no. But I think it skips on the turf, like we were saying earlier. But yeah, this is just another one of those situations where Minnesota's dialing up. This is where Flores is going to dial up one of these elaborate packages. I don't want him to dig into this bag too much. I want him to stay out of this bag. Hopefully the Lions can run the ball well enough, and then from there, I think they'll be fine. Just because, things will take care of itself. Hopefully.
Yeah, because again, while this does again translate to an incompletion, one of the reasons why it does, even though they don't get a sack out of it, is that they get the quarterback off his spot. So now Brock Purdy has to make a more difficult throw than he would have if he just got to sit back there and survey the field. This is something that you don't want to see Jared Goff doing, right? We do not want to see Jared Goff necessarily having to climb the pocket, trying to have to use his legs to extend plays, because it's just not in his it's not a strength of his. It's not something that is typically advantageous for him when it comes to him trying to make a play.
Yeah, 100% Miko. And that's not to, there's other quarterbacks that are like him, but if you're Goff there, like that ball needs to be out to Gibbs or to Montgomery in the flat or to Laporta, who just, blocked, like chipped the edge for a second and then went over into the flats and made himself available. Like that's where I think, again, the Lions could make a little bit of hay is if Minnesota does bring pressure and they get someone to release into the flat or just on a, crosser, coming from the slot. That's where you can beat them because you're just throwing it right behind that blitz, and then you got numbers and you're off to the races, hopefully.
Yeah, I mean, especially if again, what we saw in this past play, Minnesota also does a good job of, again, covering up the middle of the field, so it makes it even more difficult for Brock Purdy to be able to find, that easy throw across the middle or that quick release. If they start doing things like this against the Lions, like Morgan, that's going to have me concerned because we know that's where the Lions like to be able to pick on defenses is across the middle of the field on these crossing routes, on these drag routes. If Minnesota starts taking that away, it puts even more pressure on the guys on the outside being able to win those outside type of routes, and Jared Goff being able to read and deliver the ball quickly.
Yeah, and I would love to see more of what we saw against Denver, right? Like getting getting free runners, like getting JMO running in space across the field horizontally, like we spoke about earlier. Stretch them out that way, and then take some shots with Laporta up the seam because they're going to play. I believe Flores runs a lot of that. When they do, they run a good amount of man, so you're going to be able to
Yeah.
run picks. You're going to be able to run rubs, things of that nature, and just make it a little bit easier on Goff. So that's my hope, at least.
Yeah, and then like we were saying earlier, if your offensive line is good at picking those blitzes up and they're going to run man anyway, well, now you're even more in a favorable situation because you have an Amon-Ra St. Brown, you have a Sam Laporta, a Jamison Williams, and a Jahmyr Gibbs that are really good in those situations that can really outrun or utilize their leverage to get open against man coverage.
Yeah, and I like Minnesota's defense. Their back end's playing well. Cam Bynum and Harrison Smith at safety. You have Murphy, like we talked about earlier. You have Metellus at nickel, who's playing really well. I really like Josh Metellus right now. So they got some players, but I like the Lions' skill players more, just because they've been, when everyone's clicking, man. We kind of saw it at its a nice little peak of it. What was it? Five
Yeah,
straight drives with touchdowns last week.
yeah, yeah.
That's
That's the
pretty
Lions being
good.
able to operate at a high clip. Now, one guy
Yeah.
that's going to basically be trying to disrupt that though, and it doesn't matter if they're blitzing, it doesn't matter if they decide to drop. Danielle Hunter is on a tear. Danielle Hunter seems to have turned back the clock a little bit. Second in the league in sacks with 15 and a half. And it doesn't matter, again, what the down and distance is, doesn't matter the situation. You're always going to have eyes on this guy.
Yeah, and honestly, the tackle doesn't do a terrible job on this rush. We were watching it earlier, and I was like, honestly, he didn't do anything crazy here. Uh, Browning just unfortunately spins right back into him and
Mm-hmm.
pays the price for it. I was glad they didn't throw a roughing the passer flag here, because I didn't think he actually landed on him. I just think Browning almost jumped into him.
I was gonna say
Um,
it almost looks like he like picks him up and like drives him into the ground, but it does. It just kind of looks like this freak accident of momentum, just kind of
Oops.
leading them into this really difficult hit.
Yeah, man. Kudos to Browning for getting up for this one. But yeah, he's having a huge year. He's been doing it at a really high level now for, I feel like, forever. Uh, I would love him to get out of the division. That'd be really sweet eventually. Go go out, go away. But yeah, he's playing at a really high level, and he's someone who can win a one-on-one. In that instance, if he's working against the right tackle, he's going to be going against, for my money, the best tackle in football right now in Penei Sewell.
Yep.
But yeah, on the other side, you got Wanham going against Taylor Decker in this instance, and that could be someone who gives Decker problems. But we'll have to see. That'll be a good matchup if we do get several reps, of Daniil Hunter versus Penei Sewell. That's must see TV if you like trench warfare.
Yeah, and again, this is something that I'm a little concerned about, right? Like I'm with you in full agreement about Panay being one of the best tackles, if not the very best tackle in the NFL right now. But this is a Vikings defense that has put up a sack in every game they've played so far, Morgan. And they've only had 4 games so far this season where they've only had 1 sack. So they're not just getting to the quarterback, but they're getting to the quarterback multiple times in games. And so when you have a Daniil Hunter, when you have a DJ Wanham, when you have a Harrison Smith and an Ivan Pace, guys that are able to blitz from all different areas, the Lions are going to have their hands full. Now, the benefit is we just saw them this past week, and what it can look like when that offense is clicking on all cylinders. It's going to be really imperative to see if they can recapture that same level of magic and again take it to this Vikings defense that again can be aggressive, but that aggressiveness does leave them susceptible to big plays as well.
Yeah, it makes sense. Like when you think about how they run their defense, that they're a little bit susceptible to the big play, to having chunk plays against them. But yeah, it's something that's probably my biggest concern. Is if the Lions can protect Goff well enough.
Mm-hmm.
I think this will be, they'll fly out of Minnesota as NFC North champions, and everything will be good. And you have what, 2 more weeks of the season, and man, how exciting is everything around Detroit right now. This is awesome.
I mean, yeah, being able to go. I mean, if the Lions are able to take care of business this week, then you have an opportunity to go into Dallas and possibly even lock up the 2 seed in going up against Dallas the next week. So everything starts first and foremost taking care of Minnesota. the offense being on the same page, being able to be just as aggressive, at just as efficient as they were against Denver. And we didn't talk again a lot about the Vikings offense, but this defense being able to do what they did last week and just again also matching that same level of energy, being aggressive, being able to cue in on guys like Justin Jefferson and TJ Hawkinson. You may not be able to necessarily stop those guys, but at least limit their impact and again make life difficult for Nick Mullins, who again is a backup quarterback that's at least trying to keep his team in contention.
Yeah, and on to your point too, Miko, if I'm Aaron Glenn against Nick Mullins, I'm throwing the kitchen sink at him this weekend. I would be really aggressive, especially on passing downs. I'd be throwing everything at him just to try to get him seeing ghosts and see if you can't walk out of Minnesota with like 3 or 4 turnovers. That would be really nice too.
Yeah, this is not the week to be conservative. I know Justin Jefferson is there, and he's a handful. He is a dude that can literally pick your team apart single handedly. But the best way I feel like, and to your point, Morgan, to limit Justin Jefferson is to rattle the quarterback. Because if you just try to contain JJ on the outside and try to double him or anything like that, he's just too talented, man.
Yeah, he's the best receiver in football, in my opinion. So yeah, I'm 100%. Like there was that game last year, the Lions won when he had like what 200 something yards. It was just like big play after big play, and I was like, my
Yeah.
God, man, can we not?
Yeah, and the
So
play that
I
they
don't.
contained him on, they lost. Like
Yep.
it really didn't matter. So I mean,
No.
again, if you can light up the quarterback, if you can again, like always, contain the run game because Ty Chandler kind of got himself going against the Bengals last week. Just do the basic things on the defensive side and then allow the offense to be this high powered offense. This is just a game where again, if the defense can hold Minnesota under 21 points, I think the Lions win this game pretty easily.
I'm right there with you. I don't think it's gonna, so long as they take care of the football again. That caveat's always there with me. This team can't really. I don't want them losing the turnover battle. I don't feel good about that, especially on the road. So
Yeah.
yeah, I'm right there with you. If defense can do their we're not asking for miracles, but yeah, make Mullins uncomfortable, protect Goff, take care of the ball. Everything's copacetic. NFC North champions.
Love it. So, with that said, guys, let us know what you guys think about this upcoming matchup. What is the thing that you're most concerned about when it comes down to the Lions and Vikings matchup? Where do you think the Lions have the biggest advantage? And let us know if you agree with us. Are you just as concerned about the Vikings' aggressiveness and the Lions' ability to pick up the blitz, or do you think we can kind of put those woes behind us because of what we saw against the Broncos this past week? Let us know all that in the comments section below. Also, be sure to check out PrideDetroit.com for all the latest news, rumors, and articles that we have on the Detroit Lions. And if you're looking for any more content or you're looking to stay up to date on what we're doing over here on YouTube, be sure to hit that subscribe button, hit that notification bell. That way you can be notified anytime we upload a new video or decide to go live. But with all that said, I'm Meko. He's Morgan. Thank you guys for taking the time to watch, and we'll catch you guys in the next one.